So you have to let go of what happened to you and start healing in order for you to arrive at your destination. So today I'm going to be talking about the beauty in the detour, reclaiming your story after setbacks. And so previously, I was talking about Joseph's story, and Joseph in the Bible, quick recap, was 17 years old, and he shared his dream and his vision with his older brothers. Now, Joseph was the favorite, right? Already. His father doted on him, and his older brothers were already kind of aggravated by his presence. So Joseph had a dream about his entire family bowing down to him one day. And he shared this dream with his brothers, and they decided first they were going to kill him. And then they decided instead of murdering him, we're just going to sell him into slavery. Joseph goes into slavery. He ends up in, I think his name was Potiphar, as his overseer of his home. So he was in a good position. Potiphar's wife lied on Joseph because Joseph wouldn't sleep with her. He ends up in prison because he gets thrown into prison because she lied. But in prison, Joseph was still favored. He rose to the top as the overseer over the prison. The prison guard didn't worry about anything under Joseph's watch. So Joseph had free reign of the prison, but still he had been imprisoned because of something he didn't do. He's in prison, he's serving, he's overseeing, and two people in prison, a baker and a cupbearer, somebody who, pours the wine for Pharaoh, they both get thrown into prison, probably because they made Pharaoh mad or pissed him off, right? They get thrown into prison and have dreams. Both of their dreams they take to Joseph. Joseph decides, first of all, it's not me that interprets dreams. I will give it to God, but tell me the dream. He interprets both of their dreams. Both of their dreams come to pass. The baker ends up hanged for whatever offense he did against Pharaoh. The cupbearer ends up being restored back to his position. And Joseph said, remember me when you make it back to Pharaoh's. Of course, the cupbearer forgot about Joseph for about 2 more years. Joseph was still in prison, just serving and overseeing, and seemingly forgotten about when Pharaoh has a bad dream. He couldn't get any of the musicians or anybody to tell him what it meant. And the cupbearer remembered that Joseph had successfully interpreted his dream. Once he remembered it, he told Pharaoh. Pharaoh gets Joseph there immediately. And so Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream. Pharaoh says, hey, since you can interpret the dream, you need to oversee this project that's coming up where we have to store all excess food away for the next 7 years to prepare for a drought. Fast forward, Joseph is in this position. He is second in command over the nation. So it's Pharaoh, then it's Joseph. That's it, right? Second in command. And then the famine hit. It gets really, 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 really tough. And Joseph looks up one day, and it's his brothers that are coming to get some of the grain and some of the reserves that had been put away. This is where I'm picking up. So for Joseph, he had to first have had to get to a place where he could even forgive his brothers, right? What he does is a series of tests. First, he tells his brothers, hey, he asks a few questions about their father, and he's like, oh, is another brother, bring him back. The brothers are like, no, we can't do that, whatever. One of the brothers volunteers to stay, though, and sends the other brothers back. Joseph tells them, do not come back for more portions unless you have your younger brother with you. They go home. They're afraid to tell their father because, of course, they were the ones watching Joseph when he was killed. Now, back in the day, they told the father Joseph had been killed when they had sold him. So the father thought his son was dead. Anyway, back to the story. So they all talk amongst themselves. They convince their father, hey, he has to be able to come back with us. Joseph puts them all through more tests. It was these tests that Joseph put them through that showed Joseph that they had all changed. First, the brothers were very, very, very remorseful. They even said, is God punishing us for what we did to Joseph? They hadn't yet recognized that it was their brother Joseph. Because, of course, 17-year-old Joseph didn't look nothing like 39, 40-year-old Joseph, right? He had matured. He had grown into a man. He was second in command over Pharaoh, under Pharaoh, right, over the land. So, no, they didn't recognize their brother initially, but he recognized them. There was the scene, Joseph finally breaks and says, "It's me." The famous line from this story was that, "It's me, I'm Joseph. You all meant it for evil when you sold me into slavery, but God meant it for my good so that I could go ahead of you all and I could preserve everyone's lives." That was what he told them. To to the point, for him to get there though, you have to know Joseph had to do a lot of forgiving. He had to really release the fact that he had been sold into slavery by his own family in the first place. That's rough. Some of us don't want to forgive for less. Somebody did something to you, a little bit, kind of had a little attitude one day, and you ain't even trying to forgive that. So being sold into slavery by your own brothers, that's huge. But you can see through Joseph's journey that he ended up reconciling and understanding that even his gifts of dreams and interpretation, all of that comes from God, not from himself. And so you can see his maturity as the story continues. But still, I don't want to fast forward past it like, oh, it was just magical. He was just forgiving. No, he tested his brothers. He had to go away and cry. That means he was experiencing a little grief when he saw him. He was being triggered. He was remembering some things. And so I can definitely relate to that, being triggered, right, in my own healing journey, right? In some areas, especially what I shared previously about a time when it looked like I wasn't on the right path, a time where I wasn't working a full-time job, and it looked like I was just twiddling my thumbs, I guess, to some people, which caused a lot of people to say a lot of nasty comments to me. Like, what are you going to finally do with yourself? When are you going to get yourself up and do this or do that? I was doing something with myself. I had re-enrolled back in school, and it was during this time that I set out to reconnect to my birth family. Now, that wasn't something that I was sharing until the time came that I found them. And so a lot of these comments and a lot of this negativity that was coming at me from those people, they had no idea what was going on, which is one of my points. You have to be careful when you pass judgment on people, even passing judgment on yourself. I am guilty of even passing judgment on myself, thinking I should be doing something that I wasn't doing, or why aren't I doing this? I should be doing that, trying to get ahead of myself instead of being on my journey, instead of healing like I'm supposed to be, instead of just walking the path so that each step can just light up as I walk it out, right? And so it's not always outside critics or outside voices. Some of that is you. Some of that is your own disappointment and expectations. And I don't want to gloss over that point. And so, being judged harshly by others, by myself, that's just something that I've had to heal from, right? And so, what about you? I want to do a quick little journaling activity. I talk about journaling a lot. So I want to just walk through a prompt or two. If I can find my pen. Okay, I knew I had a pen. And so think about a time when you felt overlooked, dismissed, or had been forgotten about, right? How did you cope during that season, right? So I could just talk about, I shared this, I got held back in basic training, right? How did I cope? I ended up praying for people as they came to me for prayer. I stayed reading my word, and I just tried to keep my head up and focus on my goal. What did I learn about myself? You know what I learned? I learned that I'm capable of a lot more than I thought I was. So you would write that out. Have you truly forgiven yourself or the person that hurt you? Yes, I did forgive myself for not being on the timeline that I originally thought I should be on. But if it's a situation that you haven't forgiven either the person or yourself for, what might help you take a step towards that healing today? Would journaling about it, would you just point out your feelings? Would that help you? If so, I'm inviting you to do that. I'm going to definitely leave the journal prompts in the description. Thank you for joining me for this video talking about Joseph and my own story. And I just want you to reflect on your story as well. And so I will see you in the next video. Take care.